Well, hey there, everyone. So it is October, and I have yet to make my Halloween costume yet, so that is what we're going to do this week. I'm going to finally make my Halloween costume. So I have been thinking about this for a while, and I think what I want to be this year is Meg from Hercules. Now, the design is going to be a little bit different than what the cartoon is, because obviously it just looks a little difficult to make and for my body type to wear. So I'm going to do it a little bit differently. So I'm going to make it a corset for the top. And then for the skirt, it's just going to be like a pleated and like long slit kind of skirt. And then she does have these little like strappies that go around like the top and her waist, which I will probably be making. And then for material, I went to Walmart, and this is the only purple satin they had, so that's what I'm going to be using for the costume. It's not too far off from the original color, and then for the darker strips, I'll probably just cut off those strips and then dye them a darker purple. So that's kind of my plan for this. Now, I'll definitely be wearing this to at least one Halloween party, and then the other Halloween party, I might be wearing my spiderweb dress that I made a couple weeks ago. So that's kind of the plan. Also, if you're wondering if it is cold enough for me to be wearing this long sleeve turtleneck, the answer is no. I'm quite warm, but I've given up. I want it to be cold, so this is what I'm going to deal with. Alright, so for the corset, what I'm thinking is that it's going to be a very structured corset, and it's going to kind of come up and like end at points here, and then go under the arm. And so it's not going to have like structural straps, but it's going to have like just kind of decorative straps that swoop down here. So I do need it to be pretty structured so that everything stays up. And then again, for the skirt, it's probably just going to be a pretty simple like rectangle, but pleated all throughout with a massive slip in the front. So let's go ahead and start with the corset, because that's always the easiest part for me. And we'll see how that goes. Okay, so I redrew out the reversible corset pattern just for the front side here. So the back inside here still work. I'm not gonna have the sleeve here, so that's just gonna be a straight cut. And then I changed the usual part where the strap would connect to just a point, and then I shortened it to be straight. So this is kind of what the corset is going to look like in half. So like I said, this isn't going to be like a traditional Meg costume, but probably like a more smexy kind of Meg costume. So once I've redrawn out my corset pattern, I am going to cut that out of the purple satin material. And then since I want this to be a pretty structured corset, I'm going to do interfacing for both the lining and the outer fabric of all of these corset pieces. So to do that, I'm going to place all those pieces face down on the ironing board, and then place the glue side of the interfacing down as well, and then iron over that and fuse them together. And then from there, I can cut away the extra of the interfacing, and then I have my pieces. Now I'm just going to take all of the pieces for both the outer and the lining pieces and place them all right sides together, and then sew them. And then once I've ironed all of those seams down, I'm going to take both the outer fabric and the lining and place them right sides together, and then I'm just going to sew all along the top. Now I did trim down that point a little bit just because it was a little too intense, so there's still a point, it's just not going to be as high. And then once I've sewn it and clipped the edges, I'm going to turn it right sides out and then iron all the seams flat. Now I knew that I was going to need to take this corset in a bit, so that's why I didn't sew the side edges, which would be the middle of the back. So once I got the proper sizing, I did sew them right sides together down, and then once I trimmed those away, I turned them right sides out and then ironed them. So I have the corset front and back put together, and now that I'm here, I'm realizing that I cut out the wrong centerpiece because this was for when I did the Hobbit corset, and so I'd lowered the neckline for this, and so it's kind of really short altogether. So I'm wondering if instead of just making it a corset, if I should just add the skirt onto the top and make it like a corset dress kind of situation, and if that would just make things a lot easier, because then I wouldn't have to worry about like the top of the skirt peeking through the bottom of the corset. So I'm kind of thinking I could just pleat the skirt to the top here and then make sure I cut an opening for the back, and then I cut an opening for the slit, and then I can sew all of that together. So I think I'm gonna mess around with that and maybe do that. Okay, so I like kind of messed around with it and just like pleated it to it just to see what it would look like, and I don't think I'm the biggest fan. I think I'll stick with the original plan, just because it just takes it up way too much, and if I have the top separate, then I can add just like a longer bias tape and make it just a little bit longer, and it'll work out just fine. Plus, if I have the skirt on this, it'll weigh it down, I think, a little too much, especially without having straps on it. So I am going to stick to the original plan of have this being an underskirt. I'll still pleat it kind of in the same way. It'll just be on a waistband and whatnot. And then, so basically right now, I just need to add the boning. Then I can add my bias tape and grommets and whatnot. So let's stick with the original plan. And now it's time to do the boning for the corset. So I'm just going to do a few little boning channels all throughout the corset. And then once my boning was put in, then I could put on the bias tape. So I'm going to make the bias tape with the same purple material so that it matches. And since I want this to be a pretty long bias tape, like I'd said, so I can lengthen the corset a bit, I'm going to cut out a pretty thick strip. And then I'm going to iron it in the shape of a bias tape and then put it onto my corset. So I'm going to do this a little bit differently than I usually do, because normally I would just sandwich the bias tape on and then sew it, but I'm going to do it the correct way, where I'm going to open up the bias tape and sew it along that bottom seam and then turn it to the other side, pin it, and then top stitch it in the ditch so that you can't see the sew line, but it is sewn on the back of the bias tape. Okay, so it is day 2, and here's the corset so far. So I just need to add the grommets to the back and then the little sleeve parts here and here. So then the corset here will be done. So today is going to be probably kind of a shorter day because I just want to get this done, and I still have plenty of time tomorrow to do the skirt. Also, for the little sash parts, I have a plan. So I found this, it looks more purpley in person, but I found this like sheer curtain in my stash, so I'm figuring I can probably just make the little sashes parts out of this and it'll be enough of a contrast, and I don't have to dye material, so that will be easier. Also, I realized yesterday that I did not even up the bottom here, so the corset back is kind of uneven, but I don't think I care enough to fix that. So I'm just gonna kind of place the grommets kind of evenly and then it will work. So I'm not too bothered about that. I don't want to undo this and shorten it. So this is just how it's gonna be. Okay, so let's go ahead and get on with the grommets and then the little sleeve parts. And then here is all of the grommets put on. Now for these straps on the side and that little front flap on the front of the dress. So these are all going to be the same measurement, so I'm pretty much just going to cut out a massive strip and I'm going to sew that together, right sides together, and then turn it right sides out and iron it. And then from there I could cut out the length that I wanted these straps to be, and then I'm going to pleat both ends of the strap just to give it a little bit of dimension and then sew those pleats down. Now I was on the fence about adding this to the bodice, but in the end I decided to add it. So in the original dress, you can see that she has like a little bit more dimension to her dress where she has like a separated chest area from the rest of the dress. So I kind of wanted to like add that into my dress. Obviously it's not going to cover the entire like chest area, but I wanted to add a little flap at the very, very top just to make it look a little bit more like Meg's dress. Now before I sew these straps on, I'm going to take that front little flap and I'm going to sew it on the inside of the bodice of that front neckline there. And then once I do that, I'm going to turn it to the right side and iron that down. And then to make sure the flap doesn't come up, I'm just going to put 2 little tacking pieces on the very edges of the bottom of this flap here. And then once that front flap was done, I could sew the straps on. Okay, it is day 3, and yesterday I finished the corset. So I got the arms on and I got the little top flap on. I wasn't sure that the top flap was going to work, but I think it worked out pretty good. It's a little messy if you look a little too close, so don't look too close. But other than that, it looks pretty good. So that means all I have left today is to do the little like dark purple sashes that she has on her costume. And for that, like I said, I'm going to be using this like darkish purple sheer curtain that I thrifted. So she has like one right under her like chest here and then one that goes around her hip. Now I don't have that much real estate to work with here since that top was so short and so was my torso. But I am still going to make both, and if they both work, then good. If not, then I might just only wear the hip one, but we'll see. So pretty much I'll just need like a thin strip for the top here and then kind of a bigger like strip that I can just like have on my hip. And then once that's done, I also have to do the skirt today. So I'm going to use the remaining of the purple fabric to do the waistband and the pleated skirt. So I should have just enough to make a nice long skirt, and again it is going to have a big long slit in the front of the side, and then I'll probably make a little opening in the back so that it can like clasp closed. But now part of me is wondering maybe I can get away with putting the clasp in the same part of the skirt where the slit is going to be, because that means I would only need to do one long panel compared to like cutting it into like 2 or 3. So I may just do that to make it easier, and hopefully the like little clasp in the front isn't seen if I tuck it under the corset enough. So I think I might just do that. So basically I just need to take all of this fabric and just pleat it to the size of my waistband, and then hem it, and then that will be done. So pretty quick costume today. All right, let's go ahead and get these sashes done. And now for the little sashay pieces. So on the dress, traditionally, I think they are already, at least the top one is built into the bodice. But for me, I'm just going to make a strap that I can tie on. So I'm going to do 2. So I'm going to need a little one just for under the bust, and then the bigger one for the hip. So the smaller one is going to be cut out in a long strip that is going to be folded right sides together and then sewn. And then don't forget to do what I did, where you need to make a little gap so that you can turn the strap right sides out and then iron it. I did have to seam rip to do that. So that's the little strap, and then for the big strap, it's going to be a larger piece. So I'm going to use the already hemmed edges of this sheer curtain here. So pretty much what I need to do there is that I need to just hem the bottom edge of this sheer curtain, and then I did cut the edges at an angle, and then I can hem those as well. So for the waistband, I wanted it to be pretty thick as well, so I cut out a strip and then I took it to the ironing board and I ironed it in a bias tape like fashion. Now to get the amount of pleats that I wanted, because I'm just going to use the rest of this material, but I needed it to be pleated to the size of the waistband, I'm going to lay out the waistband and then just kind of pleat it to about the length of it, and then I can take that whole skirt to the sewing machine and then sew those pleats down. Now, before I add the skirt to the waistband, I'm going to deal with the front slit first. So there really is only about 4 inches of the skirt that is actually sewn together. So I need an opening for the top waistband so that I can get it on without a zipper or anything, and then I need the slit. So I'm just going to sew down those 4 inches, and then from there I am going to hem both of the sides of the skirt. And then finally that could be added to the waistband, so I'm just going to sandwich that onto the pleated skirt and then sew it down. And then I'm going to put 3 hook and eyes as the connection for the waistband. And then finally, once I cut the skirt to where I wanted it to be and hemmed it, we are finally ready for the final look. I think this dress is really growing on me. At first, I wasn't really the biggest fan of this dress, to be honest, but I think I really like it now. The only thing is I have to worry about spillage, just because I made it so short. So, and the neckline was too low, so I'm just a little bit afraid about spillage. But other than that, I think this turned out pretty good. It's not like an exact replica, but it is a good, I guess, like smexy cosplay. And I'm glad that I was able to do this top like ribbon here. I was like contemplating not doing it just because of how little room I have, and it kind of looked weird with it. But then I looked at the costume some more and I was like, actually it kind of looks weird without it. So I think with it, it looks more like a Meg costume. So I like it. Also, my last minute prop of a crochet flower I made for my mama, because in the scene right before she does, I won't say, she has this like white flower and has like a love revelation. So I was like, props. But yeah, for like a Halloween costume, I think this is gonna be really good. I actually might be going to a Disney themed Halloween party, so this is gonna be perfect timing. Another thing is, I wish the satin kind of sat a little flatter. This is more on like the side of costume satin, so it's not like the greatest quality of material. And I did like iron the skirt down, but it still kind of poofs out a bit just because of like my hips. So I wish it sat just like a little bit flatter. Like if I had a different material, that would have been great, but we're working on a budget here, because I did have to buy material for this. And this is the closest thing that Walmart had to a material to buy from, since Joann's is no longer an option. So yeah, considering everything, I think it turned out pretty good. So thank you for hanging out with me while I made my 2025 Halloween costume that I will probably wear somewhere, hopefully. So anything to do. If you like what I did, go and like and subscribe. I post most Saturdays, mostly at noon, and I will see you in my next video. Thank you for watching!